Talkin Money.
And we're back to Talkin Money. And here's Jeff Tarbell.
Right. How you doing? Welcome back. Hour 2 of 2. We start at 9 o'clock. We expect you to be on time. And semi-comatose. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140, or you can text us at 44-1140. We still had our the number one city, according to this chart, in terms of price return or growth. We did a couple winners on it. We'll leave it out there one more time. If you know the answer to that, you can text us, 44-1140. It's one of our neighboring states there, kind of close, and they were doing really, really poorly, this city, and now it's turned back around quite a bit. So they're up how much? So say what percentage-wise what they're doing over there?
They are up 6.1%
year over year.
Year over year.
You know the answer to that? You can. Which city is finally?
I'd take that 6%.
Yeah, heck yeah. And although it's getting a little warm down there right now, I think you got to be there in the
6% of housing prices are what there? $60,000, right?
Yeah, they're under 100 probably in some of those cases. So if you know the answer to that, we'll hold out a couple more quiz questions for some IMAX passes if you want to jump in on that. I was just looking during the break here, looking at the market this last week, and this was such a phenomenal week. You know, oil. And it was almost like a contradiction. Oil is now down to below $88 a barrel. That's the lowest close since October. In fact, almost all of the raw materials and minerals, I think even gold was down, oil was down, the stock market was way off. And yet you look at some things like auto sales, which you would think that I always look at, forget consumer confidence indexes and those kind of things too, because I don't know how much I put into all those. A lot of people put a lot of stuff into them. I just look at more what people do. And you look at the month of May. Maybe this was because we talked earlier in the first hour today about the last 6 months. The stock market was doing phenomenal. It was up 12 to 15% in that window of time, and this would be right at the end of that. So maybe people were feeling a little better about themselves. And here comes some answers on the text with the correct answer. But auto sales, you take a look at some of these numbers. I mean, Toyota was up 87% in May in sales increase. Now they had some other issues, right? Because they had some delays from other problems they had with manufacturing. So that maybe that's not a good indication. I mean, it's good for them, but somebody's buying these cars. So they're up 202,000 units. But you look at General Motors, we're up 11%. And now this is compared with May, I guess, of last year, not from the previous month. Buick and GMCs were 19% higher. Chevy gained 10%. Chrysler, a unit of Italy's Fiat. I guess I forgot that Fiat bought Chrysler. Chrysler sales were up 30%. And the Jeep Wrangler SUV and the Dodge Challenger enjoyed their best monthly sales ever.
So everybody took their money out of the stock market and bought a car.
Well, if they did, they got it out of the top. But so this tells me that you don't go out and buy a car if you feel like things aren't going well for you. Now, I've always said this a long time. You can put off doing some things for so long, right? You can keep, and that's what we've done. I think you're going to see more of these types of things coming up. So for the last 3 or 4 years, maybe even a little bit more now, bad news. So people don't want to do anything. I'm afraid to do anything. Well, the reality is your car doesn't know it's a bad economy. So you can keep limping it along and changing the tires and limping it along. And pretty soon you look back at the end of the month and say, damn, I spent more money than if I had just bought a new one. And that's, I think, what we're starting to see now. You're starting to see people looking around going, I'm not going to keep limping this car along anymore. I'm spending more money repairing this piece of junk than I could get a brand new one for. And so car sales up, a lot on a year-over-year sales. So that tells me that some people are feeling comfortable about doing things. And it's also telling me we're running to the end of life cycles on some products, and so that will help other things spur along and grow. So that was some good news. I also tore this out. I don't know why, but people looking for jobs, and I think I even talked about this before, but they're some other countries are now coming to the United States and looking for some very skilled workers. And we talked about a number of different trades and things, but this is the one that I've seen a number of times, and this is in the mining industry. And I guess in Australia, the mining industry is just booming, and they just do not have enough skilled workers. So if you're someone who's in the mining industry and you heavy equipment operator and do these different things, but in Australia, they're coming over to Texas where you get a lot of people that are familiar with the oil wells and the different things, and they're sending personal invitations to people not a huge job fair, but people who they know they're in certain skill brackets and saying, come to this event, and they're offering these guys $100,000 paychecks, bonuses. I mean, so if you have someone who's in that skilled field, and you're living in California, you might want to look around and say, hey, might be time to find another place. But Australia and overseas looking for some highly skilled workers. And the other note I had, I didn't bring it with me today, but a lot of our manufacturing, particularly in automobiles and other heavy manufacturing, which has been moved overseas for a while, or gone to Mexico, or gone to Canada, other places, is coming back to the United States. And the reason is coming back to the United States is that, our willingness, meaning employees or labor, willingness to accept a more worldwide wage rather than a United States wage is bringing them back in line with what other countries pay their employees to do. And I'm not talking about China-type labor pay, but I'm talking about getting in line with other things. And also, a lot of manufacturers finding out that doing heavy manufacturing and heavy product in China and other places is not giving them the quality that they get here. They're just not. It doesn't mean they have bad employees over there. It just means they don't have the skill level that our people do here. And so you're starting to see now a shift kind of coming back into the United States, which is, okay, we're willing to take a little bit less in terms of pay, and we produce a better product. And the combination of those two things is moving a lot of manufacturing back. And I've noted a lot of articles. I just didn't bring them up here, but a lot of construction that was going on or manufacturing going on in Canada has slipped back across the border, back into the Michigan and other areas. And a lot of stuff that was being done down in Mexico moving back up. And a lot of heavy manufacturing being done in China is being moved back into the United States. And now you look at these the car manufacturers, and I have an article somewhere with me that talks about the number of employees they're looking for in the car manufacturing field, both in the South and up north, and the number of hours these people are having to work. I mean, the employees that are in that line of work now that are working are getting huge overtime, and they're doing a lot of business, and they're reopening factories and doing that kind of things too. So I think that's a good trend, but it's a trend that has taken some time because of the union factor and because of other things that have gone on. They've gotten their wages and their cost of per individual so high with all the healthcare and everything else too that they just lost their jobs. And now you look around and say, okay, do I want to work or do I not want to work? And so we're starting to see that.
That's great stuff to start hearing, though. That's what we've been talking about for a long time is we need jobs, and it's good just to hear that there's more coming in. There's more folks getting work and at least thinking about going to work.
Well, I wish I would have made note where I heard it last week, but I caught somewhere some show where they were interviewing. I don't know if he was in the car business or I think he was almost maybe in the heavy tool manufacturing business, and he point blank said, "Yeah, we can build a cheaper product in China, but the quality is nowhere near what we get out of here. And at the end of the day, if your client's buying your product for $4 as opposed to $6, and the damn thing breaks, and they're shut down and it's costing them money, the consumer has to come around to the fact too that, hey, I may have to spend $6 for this product, but you know what? I only have to buy one of them, not 2.5, and it doesn't shut my business down too. So the consumer has to come to their own conclusions about what we're getting for the money, right?
Definitely.
So I think that we're seeing some beginnings of the turn in some of those fields. There's other fields that are getting their hat handed to them, but certainly manufacturing seems to be slowly making that turn a little bit. So I think
I say all the time. I mean, growing up, my parents had the same refrigerator, same washer, same dryer, as far as I know, all my life, and now I'm buying them every 5 years because they don't last. It's crazy, and they're 5 times more expensive than they used to be.
Yeah, I just for whatever reason we remodeled our house. I want to say it was maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I had just sold another property, so without going overboard, let's just say I wasn't looking for the cheapest stuff 4 or 5 years ago. What I was being presented, was supposed to be the top of the line, like Sub-Zero, different things, and so
quality.
Yeah, theoretically, and yet here I am now 5 years out, and I'm just starting to see the beginning of some of these things coming for some major repairs or having to be replaced. And I'm not saying the Sub-Zero was, but just these products and these washers and dryers and even like the pool pump. I had a guy out the other day. He's like, "Oh yeah, these pool pumps, they only last about 5 years." I'm like, "What? So this is a pump that runs for like 2 hours a day, and you're telling me that they only last for 5 years? I mean, what are we making here?" So I agree with you. So now you have to ask, and what frustrates me the most is that I thought when I was doing that remodel, okay, yeah, I could go to Home Depot and I could get things that are a little cheaper, but I thought, okay, look, I'm going to spend 25% more or maybe 30% more right now because I don't want to do this again.
Right.
I want these things to last for a long time. I don't want to have to go through all this again. When I sell the house, I want everything working here to be done. And the frustrating part that I've come across is that a lot of times the cost of the item really doesn't have much to do with it. I mean, maybe it's nicer looking, maybe it's bigger or something else too, but I'm not finding that these items are lasting significantly longer.
More efficient.
Yeah. So I am a little frustrated with some of that. So now I'm, if I build the next house, I'm
a tent.
I'm going to tent with a big old flat screen. That's it. So I was talking about the market here in the first hour, and I just wanted to point out a couple things that I thought were interesting. And I'm not even sure that I'm reading the right numbers. So if I'm reading these wrong, you can let me know. But you start looking at, someone had emails about, have you seen rates drop this much ever in your life in 1 week? And I'm assuming they were talking about mortgage rates. But you start looking at what countries have to borrow. So we borrow money. They're called T-bills, right? We float a bond. Someone buys the bond and we loans us money. We finance our government off the bonds because we spend more than we make. Different story. Right now, on a 10-year T-bill, Treasury bill, the United States government is paying about 1.4% to an investor in a T-bill for 10 years. You get down to the 2 years, and it's like it's like a quarter point. But let's compare the 10-year. Germany, which has another very stable government, is paying very similar, about 1.7%. As of Friday, the 10-year Italian bond was running over 6%, so almost 4 times the amount of money. And if I'm trying to find the one on Greece because it's so high it doesn't sound right. But if I'm reading on Bloomberg's site right, it said it was over 30%.
Wow.
So, and part of me makes me think that is right, because who would want to invest money in Greece right now when they're getting ready to reshuffle the deck with everything else too? So maybe 30% is right. But just take Italy, just some of the problems that they're having in Italy. So they're paying, by comparison, 6% doesn't sound like a lot of money, but when the rest of the world is paying 1 to 1.5 and you're paying 6 and on the rise, you can see that it gets very, very expensive very quickly for governments that don't have their act together to attract money to finance themselves. And so they're paying 4 times the amount of money. Now 6% on billions, if not trillions of dollars is a lot of dough.
Right.
So you start comparing some of these numbers and you start asking yourself, why do they do that? Well, they have to attract money to themselves, and it gets very expensive. And then even at 6%, which would be a great return right now compared to anything else, will anybody put their money in Greece or Italy when their economies are in trouble?
Not so good.
In trouble. So that is a good indication. I did note this week also one of the big issues that caused rates to drop and the stock market to tank out a little bit was this continual jobless rate we have, which went up to 8.2%. And again, there was a note at the bottom, if you read, we had to revise our previous statements from April and May. So every time we get a report, it's always underreported. And I don't know whether it's just because the initial report is due. Somebody's required to give a report out by a certain time frame, so they have to give the best they can. Or if it's political, they're trying to keep it, hold it down and not have to tell you until the next one's a little better. But this seems like it was one of those reports that kind of caught up, so they had to kind of go back and recalculate that last couple months were a little bit worse than we thought. The new jobs were not as great as we thought, and the combination of the two pushed the market, the jobless rates up. And what you're seeing now is you're seeing not only more people coming back in and have decided they want to look for a job again. And that's where you get into I just hate the jobless numbers because they can be manipulated to whatever you want them to be. There's different categories of unemployment, U1, U2, and they go through different categories. But if you just to say, if John says, okay, I couldn't find a job and I've just quit looking, I'm just going to stay home, for a little while and just chill out for the summer, he's not considered unemployed, but he doesn't have a job. he probably, if I walked up and said, I'll give you $50,000 to start tomorrow, he would start. And he'll probably start looking for a job again when the kids are back to school. But if John says, I'm not at the moment, I'm not looking, he's not considered unemployed. So that comes off the rolls. Well, this last change, he had more people coming back on saying, yes, I am actively looking again, and I am looking for a job, and I can't find one. And when those people swell back up again, that pushes that number back up. So that was a little bit of a kind of a mix mash of 3 or 4 things happening together in 1 week, but scared the bejesus out of the market and pushed everybody around. So thought it was fairly interesting what was going on there. We got to take another quick break here. We got any more quiz questions? Yeah, we'll give away that too. We did get another winner. So our quiz answer for the housing prices, the number one market that's doing the best in terms of rebounding from year over year is where?
That'd be Phoenix, Arizona.
So yeah, so Phoenix back up. And they're doing the best of the group. So, and they also were the worst of the worst.
Right.
So they actually found a way to put an end to their turmoil and get back on the path. So,
yeah. So for our next quiz question, we've been talking about GM quite a bit. You know, pulling out of the Super Bowl, pulling out of some of their marketing.
Yeah, Facebook marketing. Yeah.
Just spending a ton of money out there, and they've decided. The question is, which sports team are they going to put some money into?
Okay.
And a recent survey has said that this sports team has doubled their fan base to 659 million people. Nearly 1/10 of the world's population is a fan of this team.
Wow.
I'd probably put my money in there, too.
So General Motors is going to start marketing with this sports team, and 1/10 of the world's population claims this team as their favorite sports franchise. Wow. It is not. That is unacceptable behavior, Chris, while we're on the air. 339-1140, 1-800-920-1140. You can text us at 441140. Which sports franchise says 1/10 of the world is their fan? This is Talkin Money. We'll be
right back.